the hormone surge I get post-period feels like depression. And I'm sure that if someone did more research, that they could track the way we feel with what hormones are kicking in. But I've done a ton of research just like you, Taylor, and unfortunately there's not a lot of info. We're over half of the world's population, and why would we have people researching how our hormones work? That'd be crazy. Hi guys, RACH here, and welcome to another episode of the show. Very specifically, another episode of a series that we like to call Ask RACH, where people call into Hotline from all over the world and ask me questions. If you have a question, if there's something you would love to hear me talk about that I haven't talked about before, or you've got something going on in your own life that you feel like you are struggling with, give me a call. So I would love to submit a theme for you along this topic. I am looking for questions about mindset. Is there something that you feel like you are specifically struggling with when it comes to mindset? Maybe it's the right mindset to crush your health goals. Maybe it's the right mindset to take your business to the next level. Maybe it's the right mindset that you need to leave a relationship that is no longer serving you. If you have a question about mindset, that is a theme I am looking to explore. Call the hotline. It's 737-400-4626. It's like an old school answering machine. You call and leave me your question. You can do it anonymously. I don't have to use your name, or I can use your name, whatever you prefer. Yes, you can ask about anything at all, but really specifically in the next month, I'm looking for questions on mindset. So if you've got one, call your girl, let me know. Now, we are going to explore another round of questions, and how these come into Hotline is people call in, and then a member of my team goes in and they create a little sheet for me, and they'll tell me the topic of the question and the person who called with a link to the voice memo. So I like to listen to these in real time with you, so I have no prep. So it's as similar to a live event as possible. If you've come to see me speak live, you maybe have seen these moments where I interact with the audience, and I do almost like an intervention with different members of the audience. And I try and keep it as close to that. So there's no prep for this. I have not heard these questions yet. We're going to listen to them in real time. And we're starting with one from Taylor. She has a question about hormones, which I love this topic. So let's jump in.
Hey, Grace. Thanks so much for talking about hormones and bringing that into the podcast. It has totally inspired me to receive my results. But today, you talked specifically about days 19, 20, and 21 and how your body has a hormone surge in that time. Yesterday was day 21 for me, and I felt like a horrible mom. So I would love to learn more about those 3 days specifically. And guess what? I can't find anything online. No one's talking about it. So I would love to hear more. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Thank you, Taylor, for this question. And thank you for pointing this out, because I have to say, I did not know about these days in the hormone cycle until my doctor told me about them. So if anyone's curious what Taylor's referring to, I did an episode recently. Let me tell you guys the number. So the episode Taylor's talking about is episode 396. It was actually another Ask RACH episode where I talked about my hormone cycle and how learning to track my hormone cycle was really crucial in me getting control of my emotional health. For a very long time, I thought that I was starting to really deteriorate mentally. And I think a lot of women who are perimenopausal probably find themselves in similar situations. There is not enough info out there about our cycles and how they work and how they affect our body. So if all of a sudden you start experiencing hormone surges, they present as mood swings, brain fog, rage, sadness, depression, anxiety. They present themselves as these things that make you feel like you're going crazy or like your mental health is deteriorating. And then if you don't know what's going on, your hormones will calm back down. Everything will start to feel a bit more normal. But for me, that made me feel even worse off because I was like, wait, why is it swinging back and forth? In retrospect, obviously it was my hormones, but I didn't have any information. So that really was harsh. And you can listen to that whole episode. I talk about tracking your cycle and all of the things that affect it. But what Taylor's asking about specifically is a day in your cycle, days 19, 20, 21. You can look this up, which is when your estrogen and progesterone surge. Now I'm going to get this wrong. I think it's happening because you're going to release an egg or something big is happening with the uterus. I'm terrible that I don't know. I don't really need to know what's happening. I just know that your hormones surge. The reason this is so important is that those days, 19, 20, 21, that's in week 3 of your cycle. It's not when PMS happens. It's not when you're about to start your period. So if you were taught, like I was, that the only time that we feel a little nutty is right before we bleed, but then you're having this very extreme emotional reaction on day 20, let's say, you don't think it's hormones. So you, like Taylor or like me, think that you're the worst person alive. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of information about how to better manage it. Like I've tried to figure out, are there foods I can eat? Are there supplements I can take? There's not a ton of info, so I will just tell you what I did. This is not, talk to your doctor, talk to a naturopath doctor is my best advice. But number one, I think the most important is just knowing what those days are. So the very first day of your cycle, when you hear people say day 10, day 20, day 28, day 1 is the first day you bleed. And it's the first day you bleed significantly because I will spot a little bit before I actually start to bleed for real. So the very first day that you're like bleeding and it's red blood, that is the first day of your cycle. So by day 19, day 20, day 21, you're at a place in your flow where those hormones are surging. And for me, I get very annoyed super easily. Like I just don't have my normal chill demeanor. I get frustrated really easily. I get angry very easily. I have way less patience for my kids. And I don't want to feel this way. It's like another person, like an alien has taken over control of my body or something. And it's so nutty because I will just be like a monster and then 48 hours go by and I'm fine again. So I guess the first thing is knowing what day you're on and knowing that it is likely that those days are going to be harsh for you. I remember years ago that this would happen, but I didn't know what it was. And it was always for me this exact same feeling of like life never gets better. That would be this really weird narrative I would latch on to is like life is hard. It never gets better. It's almost like for me, like those days make me feel a little hopeless. Like I feel really frustrated with my kids because I'm like, why do I suck at parenting so much? Or like, why am I not closer to my daughter? Or why do I keep getting frustrated with my son? But I will latch on to that narrative. I don't know why it's that, but for me, it's like, it's so hard. It never gets better. And God bless my boyfriend who at this point, like just sort of expects that around those days, he's going to hear some version of me crying and saying, why is it so hard? And that, I guess, would be my second piece of advice beyond knowing what day you are in your cycle so you can anticipate those days. If you have a partner, no matter what gender that partner is, they should be aware of what your cycle is. If you have a partner who is not supportive of the fact that you have a hormone cycle, that's outrageous. It's 2023. All right. They don't have to get up in there and give you a pap smear, but they should know what's going on with you because you are managing something that makes you feel out of control of your body. Like that's really affecting you in ways that can potentially be very harsh. And you need to have a partner that cares about the fact that that's going on. If you come to see me do the podcast tour this summer, I talk a lot about periods, hormones, uterus. I just did my first test show in LA last weekend, and I was really shocked at how many men were in the audience. And it's always a little interesting when I'm gonna have a full-on conversation. It's, by the way, hilarious. Like, I'm talking about these things in a really funny way. And since the audience is predominantly bleeders, we're all like peeing our pants laughing at how insane it is. But what I was so in love with is that all of the men I could see, and my boyfriend was in the back of the room, and he was like, all the guys I could see were crying, laughing, like with the women. They were laughing just as hard. They were nodding their heads. They were like, yeah. And like, there was one guy, God bless him, I still remember his name, Mitchell, in the front row. Shout out to Mitchell. He'd come with his wife. He was sitting in the front row, and he was such a good sport. And I, of course, like I had to use Mitchell. He was like, the whole time I was referencing, I was like, Mitch, let me tell you a story. Mitch, here's what's going to happen. But Mitchell had 3 daughters. And like that guy, there's 4 women in his home that he is trying to do the very best he can with and be supportive of. So like, you better have a partner, female or male, like whoever your partner is, they should care that you're going to have a few hard days. All of that to say, my boo expects that on those days, he's probably going to have to give me a lot of hugs. I get very glommy, is what we call it. Like I'm a glommer. I glom onto him. I need a lot of extra, like, hold me. Like a newborn baby. I'm like, give me skin to skin contact. I need to just like hold you for a second. But I need extra compassion from others, but also from myself. I try very hard to not schedule big, important things around those few days, because I'll tell you guys that those few days for me are more intense than the hormones I get for my period. Without question. My period's actually pretty chill. Around my period, I more feel weepy, like I'm a lot more prone to cry. But those 3 days, 19, 20, 21, I'll cut a bitch. That's when I'm like, Houston, we have a problem. Stay away from me. Or my shirt's like making me feel weird. Or like I'm sweating. I'm mad at the world. Like I just get a little bit more intense. The other thing that I've found, I don't know if this will be helpful for you guys. I've talked about it a bit. This is one you got to talk to your doctor about. I have anemia, and my anemia can get pretty severe if I'm not on top of it. So I'm constantly like eating iron-rich foods. I take an iron supplement every single day, but I also double up that iron supplement during my period because I'm losing so much blood. And I really recommend that if you talk to your doctor, because it's very interesting to me that I will think, oh, I'm super hormonal and these things are happening. And what's actually going on is that I'm anemic. Like, it's funny. At this point, those few days, the surge feels like anger. The hormone surge around my period feels like sadness. And the hormone surge I get post-period, which is usually a sign that I have not taken enough iron, feels like depression. And I'm sure that if someone did more research, they could find that they could track the way we feel with what hormones are kicking in. But I've done a ton of research just like you, Taylor, and unfortunately there's not a lot of info, which makes sense because, you know, we're over half of the world's population, and, you know, why would we have people researching how our hormones work? That'd be crazy. But anyway, I've learned to pay attention to what the feeling is, and that helps me figure out what's going on. I will also, in those 3 days of my 19, 20, 21, I will also double up on holy basil if I need it. So holy basil is an adaptogen. I've talked about it 4 billion times on the show. You can get it anywhere. It's literally basil in a little pill. But an adaptogen helps your nervous system adapt. The way I describe it is it's like the thing that gave you anxiety, you can still see it, you know it's there, but you're like separate from it. It sort of gives you this cushion, so you're not in the anxiety. And on those days, I'll take my holy basil earlier in the day. So I typically take it at night. And if I'm having like a real, like I really feel like my anger's having a hard time and I'm, let's say home with the kids on a Saturday, I'll take my holy basil at like noon. And it'll just help me to chill out a little bit. Because I'm going to be real, if I don't take on a supplement to help me in that moment, I'm probably going to reach for like vodka at 5:00. I'll be like, thank God it's happy hour. And I really want to aim for having cocktails or having drinks or having a glass of wine to celebrate, not to de-stress. Because alcohol is a depressant. If you don't know this, alcohol is a depressant. It lowers us in a lot of ways. Not only does it lower us in a lot of ways, but when you come back the next morning, you're working from a deficit. You're not at 0, you're at like -4. So putting alcohol into your body when you're stressed out is actually way more harmful than putting alcohol into your body when you're having a great time. It's your sister's birthday, you're out at dinner. Yes, I'd love a glass of champagne. Like, it's a celebratory thing. There's something completely different happening in your nervous system than when you're super stressed out, super hormonal, and you top it off with a beer. So for me, I'll take that adaptogen earlier in the day, and it tends to help me kind of bridge that gap. The other thing I've definitely used before, when I met with Dr. Amen a year or two ago, he gave me GABA, which you can research. GABA is a great calming mechanism. And he gave me that. He was like, if you ever feel like you shouldn't have a drink, but you want to have a drink because you need to chill out, take one of these. And those do absolutely help me. So I'll take GABA or I'll take a holy basil. So that's what I do to manage it. And I want to recommend to every single one of you that you just start tracking your cycle. I kept a note in my phone for 2 years, and I would just be like, day 1, day 12, and I'd say like, I feel really low today, or my energy's amazing today, or I knocked out 4 podcasts today. Like, I would say what was going on, or my skin's breaking out, or I feel super bloated. Like, I was tracking my emotions and what was going on with my body and how I was sleeping and what was going on with my, like, was I turned on? Did I want to have sex? Was I not interested? I was tracking it all. And then I would go back. Let's say it would be like a Tuesday and I was having a really low day. I would go, okay, well, today's day 14. I'm making this up. And then I'd go look at day 14 the month before and day 14 the month before that. And I'd be like, oh, crazy. On this day, every month, I feel this same way, which helped to normalize my feelings, but also helped to separate me from them. Of like, oh, this is just something my body's going through. It'll be okay. It's gonna pass by tomorrow. So for what that's worth, Taylor, I'm sorry that there's not more information for us bleeders, but this is one of those things that we need to arm ourselves with the information and make sure that our generation shares this information, that we start to reignite a tribal culture of women who share what's going on. Unfortunately, our mamas and our grandmas went through some pretty harsh conservative ideology around what they were allowed to speak about or show or share. And that has given our generation a huge gap in knowledge. So let's not bemoan the fact. Let's not complain about the fact. Let's just do better. Let's us figure it out. Let's us get the knowledge. And then let's us as a community pay it forward and make sure your daughter, the other girls in your, like my son's girlfriends or my son's, friends, like I'm just like, here's what's going on. Here's what you need to know. Ask me questions. Like, let's reignite what should have happened in our knowledge base. And that's this episode of Ask RACH. If you have questions, I hope you will call in and ask them. Remember, we're talking about mindset. So anything that you have surrounding mindset, give me a buzz, 737-400-4626. And if this episode was helpful for you, please send it out into the community. I will be back soon with more info. And until then, remember, I love you and I'm rooting for you. Some of you need to have a very real heart-to-heart with yourself about whether or not this thing that you're pursuing actually feels like a must.